Hey, great to see you. Welcome to this video called How to Turbocharge Your A-Game. Huge plot twist. I'm sitting down. All right, after 7 years making videos for you, I got a bit tired, all right? I'm getting old. Not really. I'm still full of the same irritating keenness that I always was. Let's talk about your A-game. A-game. Playing poker is a two-step process. Step one is how much knowledge you have, how much information you have, how much talent you have. If you like, how good a poker player you could be, in theory, if you like. Step two is what you actually do in practice. So what do you actually do at the table? How good are your decisions in real time? How do you handle the pressure of playing poker when you're under fire? Because playing No Limit Hold'em is not easy. You're under a lot more pressure to make decisions. You know, with time pressure and with money at stake or prizes at stake than you have in almost any other area of your real life. Now, I say this without knowing who's pressed play on the video. Maybe you're a cardiac heart surgeon, in which case disregard that last bit. But for most of us mortals, poker puts us in that really strange position. And that's why playing your A-game is a thing. Because by A-game, I mean the very best you can play. So I'm going to give you some tips in a second that shortcut your improvement in your A-game, but also critically your improvement to produce that when you need it most, because that's what No Limit Hold'em is. Now I'm going to talk to you about something I call the execution gap. That's the difference between how well you can play in theory, as I talked about earlier, and how well you play in reality, that gap. And it exists for all of us. I'll tell you about when I first became fascinated with this. I played a lot of poker in America, as if you watch my other videos, you might well know, when I was younger. I played limit poker because that was the game that was played a lot and a game that you could beat pretty easily if you put a bit of work in. Back in the day, this is. And then No Limit Hold'em gained in popularity and I started playing it. And when I first jumped into bigger games, so this story comes from a 2-5 game without a cap. So people would have, you know, anything from $500 up to a few $1,000s on the table. And you don't need to know the specifics of this hand, but the situation was I was heads up with an older player. He was excellent, actually. He had a black polo neck on. Imagine this in your mind's eye. Black polo neck and a silver grey comb over. He was like a lounge singer from Vegas gone by. Let's call him Lounge Singer Larry. Not his real name. Could be his real name. And we were in a hand, and I raised pre-flop. I had the betting lead. I had top pair, betting. And then I bet on the river, and he raised. And you'll know this doesn't happen very often, that you have the betting lead, and then suddenly on the river, somebody raises. It's one of those raises from nowhere. Now, very often you have to call because there's a lot of money in the pot. And, you know, these are bluffs as much as they are the nuts. Although there are some situations where people only do it with the nuts. Anyway, I was in this hand. This guy, Larry, made this big raise and I froze up. So instead of thinking through the hand analytically, I became scared. It was one of the first times I played No Limit Hold'em for this much money. He bet $3,000 roughly, like all the money I had in front of me. And this was going to put a sizable dent in my bankroll. And I think at the time it was the biggest bet. I'm trying to remember. I think it's probably the biggest bet I'd ever had to make a decision over. And instead of thinking, what's his hand range? What's happened during this hand? How do I assess this spot? What are my pot odds? I was just thinking, oh my God, it's $3,000. I'm going to lose $3,000. And hopefully you haven't had this feeling too often because it's not great for your poker. Anyway, I panicked and quietly slid my cards back to the dealer and into the muck. And Larry turned over 7 high for a missed flush and gave me a little smile. And it wasn't a nice friendly smile. It was a, that's you. Taught a lesson smile. So I had a little cry, not at the table, that'd be unprofessional, around the back of the casino, and learnt my lesson. But the lesson I learnt was I need to get better at playing my A-game when it matters most, at playing well in big pots, at making good decisions under pressure. It's a critical skill. So let's do some work on it. 4 things I've got for you. On a slide, look, professional. You don't need my handwriting anymore. It's a bit of a shame, isn't it? Let's have a look. So first of all, step 1 is honesty away from the table. Honesty away from the table. And I could have put work away from the table. We're going to talk about that a little bit in a second. But honesty away from the table is really important in your development as a poker player. If you're just turning up and playing and not doing any work on your game, that's fine. Maybe you view it as recreation. But what you're setting yourself up for is an inability to make big decisions in big pots. Because that pressure that you feel is not going to go away. It's just that you get more used to it the more you make that kind of decision. So what I want for you is for you to be able to play your best right at the end of tournaments when it really matters, or when you move up in cash, or when you move up in tournament binds. And so you need to do work away from the table on the things that are going to stop you from doing well. The more work you put in, then the easier it is to make those decisions because they've become more normalized. So quick tip on this. Right now, pause the video or after the video, make a list of your weaknesses in your game. You can either do that just from your own, perception, or you can think about the best players at your limit. What do they do that you don't do as well? Make that list, order them in terms of impact on your game, and start working on them in half-hour chunks whenever you have the time. Start with the most important thing. Go and get information. If it's from us and our training course is great. If it's from somewhere else, also great. But start working on your weaknesses to give yourself more confidence and more ability in the heat of battle. All right, tip number 2 to playing your A game more often is to use the second person technique. The second person technique. Now, thinking back to my story, I was overwhelmed with emotion, the emotion of panic and potentially losing. And I wasn't able to make a good analytical decision. Now, you probably won't have a meltdown as big as that because this was very early in my career, and I'm sure you've played more poker at the limit you play at than I had in that hand. But you'll have that on a smaller scale, that inability to think clearly when it matters. A great way to do this is to get rid of subjective emotion. So our subjective emotion, how we feel, how you feel about the hand you're playing, about not wanting to lose, about making a good decision, is critical. And you can get rid of it by taking yourself, look, I'm moving myself, taking yourself out of the equation. You do this in your mind's eye. So you can literally imagine you're watching the hand from the side, or the trick I use is imagine the hand is in a hand replayer in some analysis software. So I'm seeing the cards and the bets, but I'm not involved. So use the second person technique to make a clearer thinking decision when you're under pressure. All right, number 3 is to stay engaged in the game. Stay engaged in the game. This is so important. No limit hold'em is sometimes described as hours of boredom and moments of terror because you fold a lot or you play very small hands and then suddenly you have a huge decision to make. The problem is our brains don't like that. They like routine and association and understanding where they're at. So these big moments of pressure are hard to deal with. One of the ways to combat it is to stay engaged in the game at all times. Now, if you're playing more than one table online, that makes it a little easier. But even then, you're still going to have times where you're not making big decisions. So whatever format you're playing, follow the games that you're in. When there's a hand that you're not involved in, play it through as if you're one or other of the opponents. Think about what the player's ranges are in that hand. Stay engaged. This is going to do 2 things. First of all, it's going to prepare your system and your brain so that when you do make a big decision, you can do it with your A game more often. Second of all, it's going to give you information about your opponents that you can then use. So you'll actually play better. You will have a better chance of playing your A game. So stay engaged, really important. And finally, tip number 4 in this one, to play your A game more often, is to get serious about your analysis. Now, I know that you probably are into poker to play poker, not to do lots and lots of homework or a maths exercise or something. It's not really like that. But here's the truth of it. If you want to improve, as I said before, you need to do work away from the table, right? Improve your A game and then improve your ability to execute your A game more often is the strategy. So do whatever you can in whatever time you have. I know life gets in the way, but do what you can. I recommend 20, 30-minute blocks of study on different things and do them maybe before you play to get your kind of poker brain warmed up. And when I say get serious about your analysis, I mean actually look at the hands you've played. So in order to get better at playing your A game, you need to know what you actually did when you were playing. Otherwise, you'll just be in denial about it and you won't examine your decisions and think about why you made them and think about what your opponents were doing. Flip it round so you see how you played from their point of view and so on. Spend some time with the hand you've actually played critiquing them. Might be painful sometimes, but that's how you get big improvement. All right, that's how you improve on and off the table. If you've liked this, hit the like button. Do subscribe and turn on notifications. It helps you know when we've released a new video and also really helps the channel, so I appreciate it. Lots of luck improving your A game. Leave me a comment or a question or an idea for another video below. In the meantime, have fun playing and I'll talk to you again in another video very soon.